what it's going to take in order to really do that comes down to something that isn't really talked about in most magical books. Now, if you're not aware of it already, I'm doing a, and I'm gonna post a link here in just a moment. I'm doing a link to or to my Principles of Magic challenge, where, among other things, we explore these very issues of the personalization and relevance. And for people who are going through this challenge right now, you know that we've already talked about that in day one video, because you either saw that video today or you're going to be seeing it tomorrow. But let's get down to it right now. When we talk about the personalization, and here we go, we got our link. Let's just grab that real quick. Computer's acting all wonky right now, which doesn't help. When we talk about personalization and relevance, what we're really talking about is the fact that when it comes to the way that magic is practiced, what makes magic work, what gets you consistent results, really comes down to understanding that you must make magic relevant to you. And unfortunately, this isn't something that's really talked about in most occult books, and the reason why is because what we have is prescriptive teachings, which say you have to do it my way or the highway. You know, you're not often going to see someone who says, "Hey, here's this technique. Go ahead and try it, and see what you can do with it, but then go ahead and make it your own." Unfortunately, a lot of times what you're going to see is people just telling you what you can or can't do. You know, a good example of that would be like with pop culture magic, for example. I can't tell you how many times I've had people say to me, you cannot do pop culture magic. You know, this is not something that's viable for you. And I find it quite interesting, because the reality is that at the end of the day, you can do pop culture magic. You can practice it in whatever way you want. And what makes it viable is because pop culture magic is relevant. Alright folks, sorry that things are getting a little chaotic here. It figures that when I want this to be working, the technology is being weird. That just is what it is. So when we talk about personalization and relevance, we're really finding what is relevant to us, what is going to make sense to us. Okay, finally I can see the video. Let's go ahead and post the comment here. And again, folks, I'm sorry this is so discombobulated. It's not on purpose, unfortunately. And for those who are watching this later on YouTube, it's not on purpose. It's just the fact that the technology was getting a little weird. Anyway, that's the link to the Principles of Magic Challenge. Alright, so getting back to the matter at hand. Why do we do what we do when it comes to magic? Why do we have so much of a struggle with magic? Well, I'll tell you why. Because we're sold on this prescriptive notion of how magic works. We're told that we have to do magic this one true way. And the problem with doing magic the one true way is that it doesn't work very well if that one true way doesn't fit who and what you are. Okay? We want magic to fit who and what we are. We want it to be relevant to us. We want it to be something that is personalized, that speaks to who and what we are. But we're told we can't do that. Well, I'm going to tell you otherwise. You can make magic relevant to you and personalize it to something that is relevant to you. And this is why pop culture magic works, and this is really the key to getting consistent results. Well, it's one of the keys anyway. When you understand that you can personalize your magical work, that you can make it relevant to who you are and the way that you think and approach the world, then you discover that magic, in fact, is very customizable. Yes, there are certain core mechanics that aren't customizable per se, but what you can do with those core mechanics is customizable. So I want you to consider that when you're looking at it in terms of a question of relevance, and in terms of the way that you look at the world, that if something is relevant to you, it can actually be very viable as a way to work to do magical workings. Whereas if you're doing something that's not relevant to you, it doesn't really speak to you, you're going to find that it doesn't produce consistent results. It's very hard to get consistent results if you do not find something relevant to who you are and how you practice magic. You know, case in point, I would say something that really stands out to me would be people who say, well, you have to worship the ancient gods. Now, don't get me wrong, some people do worship and work with the ancient gods, and that's perfectly a-okay. If that's relevant to you, great. But if it's not relevant to you, it's going to be really hard to develop a viable approach to doing magical work. And unfortunately, what we have people who are sold on this notion that you must do magic a specific way, that you must be in this magical tradition, you must do things exact like X, Y, Z, and if you don't, well, tough. And there's very rarely explanations for that. And what isn't considered is, how do we make this practice relevant? How do we actually make it work for us? We make it relevant by recognizing what the window dressings are. The fact that at the end of the day, the window dressings are going to be things that are going to be optional. The window dressings are going to be things that we take as you have to have this, but they really aren't. Like when you look at magical tools, you might think, okay, I have to use X, Y, and Z magical tool. Well, do you? Why? What makes magical tool X, Y, and Z better than, say, a paintbrush or a Doctor Who sonic screwdriver? Well, the answer to that really comes right down to the relevance you attach to that magical tool. And so when you understand that there is a specific relevance issue that plays a role in how you practice magic, it changes the way that you're approaching things. Because instead of doing things that aren't relevant to you and don't speak to you, you start to look at your activities and you say, I'm going to do things that are relevant to me, that do speak to me. I'm going to work with spirits that embody who and what I am, that embody the values that I want to manifest into the world. And as a result, we're able to go and do things with those spirits in ways that we wouldn't have otherwise. So I want you to keep that in mind, because a lot of times people deny themselves the relevance of what speaks to them in their magical work, because they get into this prescriptive tunnel that says you have to do things a certain way. And the thing we have to always ask ourselves is, why must we do things a certain way? And if there's no good explanation for it, and there often isn't in a lot of these magical books and texts, then what we do is we say, okay, let's kick that out the door and figure out why. Let's actually figure out why. And if we still can't figure out why, then let's figure out how we can do it better. And that's really what I'm about in terms of practicing magic. I want to do things better. Right? I don't want to do something just because that's the way it's been written about or presented, and neither should you. I see, it's fascinating to me, because in the last few days I've had a number of people sign up for the Principles of Magic Challenge, which again, really grateful for. And what's fascinating to me about it is that a lot of the answers really speak to the fact that, there's something missing from the magical work that they're doing. And what's missing isn't something that's wrong with them. There is, because there's nothing wrong with these people who are doing this. It's something that's wrong with the way that magic's been presented and taught. What's happened is they've been told, you have to do magic a certain way. And it doesn't speak to them in the manner that makes them actually want to do it. And so maybe they get results sometimes, but they don't get consistent results. And the reason they don't get consistent results, in part, is because what they're doing is not relevant to who and what they are. It does not speak to them, and it does not provide them an avenue for manifesting reality. And that's really what we want to look at. We want to look at manifesting possibilities into reality. We want to achieve specific results. If we're going to do that, we have to do something that is relevant to us, that speaks to who we are as people, and speaks to the way that we live in this world. And so what I would challenge you to do is to ask yourself, is to take a look at your current magical practice. And if you're not getting the consistent results that you want, ask yourself, is what I'm doing actually relevant to me? Does it speak to me as a magical practitioner? Does it speak to me as a person? And if it's not relevant, then personalize it. Make it relevant. Ask yourself what would make it relevant. And trust that. Believe in that. Because when you do that, it is going to give you an edge in how you approach your magic. So for example, if Doctor Who speaks to you and that's the way you want to practice magic, then use Doctor Who. Figure out how you can map Doctor Who onto the way that you practice magic, and there's always a way. And then start seeing what happens. And if you find that you're getting better results that way, then that in and of itself should tell you right there that the relevance and the personalization trumps the prescriptive approach to magic. And that's really what I want to teach you in the Principles of Magic, is how to look past the prescriptive approach and really understand that magic is ultimately descriptive. That the way we look at how we practice magic is more important than what we're told. If I had listened to a number of people over the years who told me that I was doing magic wrong, I wouldn't have written any of the books that I've written. I wouldn't be doing any of the magical work I'm currently doing, and I certainly wouldn't have manifested the results that I've manifested in my life. And I find that when people personalize their magical work, when they make it relevant to them, when they do something that allows them to customize the way they approach magic, they get better results. And the reason is really quite simple, because we're approaching magic in a way that allows us to understand it through what really makes sense to us. And look, people have different learning styles. Like you look at education, and you know why the education system is broke? It's the same reason, because there's only one learning style that's prioritized over all the others. Well, it's the same thing with magic. If there's only one learning style that's prioritized, if there's only one way, or that it's the highway for you, then it's really hard to get those consistent results. So, I want you to take a look at your magical practice. What does that magical practice really look like to you? Are you getting the results that you want to get? If you're not getting the results, then what could you change about it? What could you do to make it more relevant and have it speak to you? Because here's the thing, magic is very customizable. There are certain underlying mechanics, core mechanics, that are at work. But once you know what those are, the sky's the limit in terms of what you can do, because you can change things around to fit who and what you are and how you understand the world. And really that's the beauty of magic, because magic isn't an exact science, it's an art as much as anything else. I mean, there are scientific aspects to magic in the sense that there are certain core mechanics at work, but there's also artistic aspects. And when we understand that, it allows us to change the way we approach magic. And that's where the personalization and relevance comes in, because we make it relevant to us. And in my opinion, you have to make something relevant to you in order to be able to make it work. When it's relevant to you, then it allows you to start going out there and making the changes that you're looking for with your spiritual practice. Alright, so that's it, and if you found this video helpful, click on that love, click on that like, let me know, and feel free to leave some comments below, and I'll see you around. And if you're in the Principles of Magic Challenge, I'll see you tomorrow in the next video. Alright, take care.